What's going on, everybody? Good morning. We are smack dab in the middle of the week, and we are one day into the Seattle Seahawks 3-day mandatory minicamp. So we actually have some things to talk about now. We have some things to discuss, some things to maybe learn from. So let's go ahead and get into it. Obviously, all this stuff happened yesterday, but I like to give as much time as possible for information to be circulated before I make the video about training camp stuff. So I usually don't make it the day of unless I really feel like the storm is over and everything that needs to be said has been said. So, one of the big things that came out of yesterday was actually something that had nothing to do with anything that happened on the field as it regards the Seahawks. This actually was decided off the field, presumably, although it will eventually transform into something happening on the field. The Seattle Seahawks are going to be doing joint practices, and joint practices are something that we never did with Carroll. In fact, he seemed to resist it. So Mike Macdonald, in his first year as the Seahawks head coach, is coming in here, and he's going to do a joint practice with the Tennessee Titans. So we're going to do a little bit of a cross-country trip over to Nashville to do practices with the Titans. They also have a rookie head coach, by the way. So I'm definitely excited to see what happens here. I'm definitely decided to see what develops. Joint practices tend to produce a lot of brawls and a lot of physical confrontations between players, but there are also good things that come out of it as well. You get to look at things from a slightly different angle. You get to look at things from players that are outside your organization during those practices. And I think it's good news. Now, it's not going to happen for about 2 months, but it is going to happen. So, cool little announcement. We're getting joint practices. All right, so moving on to some of the stuff that we learned from the players and coaches from this training camp session. Got a couple things from Aaron Levine first. And one thing that he passed along from McDonald is that there is a 9-player leadership team that is a conduit between coaching staff and players to communicate issues and messaging and ask questions. So I assume most teams probably have a setup like this. So it's not so much that. One thing that was pointed out by McDonald, however, is that one of those 9 players is Laken Tomlinson, who just got here a couple months ago. Now, I kind of get why this might be the case. He's a veteran. He's been in the league a long time. He's been a Pro Bowler. He's been on some really good teams, and he's had a good amount of success in his career. I kind of get that. Nevertheless, it sure sounds like they are prepping and intending and planning Laken Tomlinson to be the starter at left guard when the season starts. And I can respect the fact that he's a leader. I can respect the fact that he offers some veteran qualities that you can't get from everybody. There's no way I'm going to be able to get excited about that. So I'm going to have to keep beating this horse. There's no reason to believe that Laken Tomlinson is going to be a good fit for this offense. And there's not really much of a good reason to think he's a good player. Like, he's a couple years removed from being a good player in this league. Now, you want to say what happened the last couple years wasn't his fault, protecting really bad quarterbacks on really bad offenses. Okay. It's still been a couple years since he's been a good player in this league, to my eye. And even in his prime, he wasn't a fit for this offense. So I look at this and I go, okay, cool, he's taking a leadership role. And I also wonder who could the other 8 players be? And there are some guys you assume would be there, like Jaron Reed. And then there are some guys you would maybe wonder if they've gotten to that point yet, like Geno Smith. You would assume the guy like Lockett's there. But then I think about it through the Laken Tomlinson filter, and I come back to they seem to really like this guy. They seem to really think highly of Tomlinson. And it sounds like they're just going to give him the starting job. And I get the sense that once the games start, we're not going to like what we see all that much. He is less mobile than Damian Lewis. And Damian Lewis left in part because he didn't fit the zone scheme. So, a little bit concerned about that. But it is interesting to note that a player who just got here is part of the leadership team. But there was a decent amount of turnover this offseason, I guess. So, it makes sense. All right. Curtis Crabtree here talking a little bit about the one player who was not present. That's right. In case you were wondering who showed up to Seahawks mandatory minicamp, everybody showed up except for one player, Michael Dixon, who was away because he's getting married. So no holdouts, no sit-outs, no disgruntled players, no contract holdout type situations. It's just a team that is happy to show up to work and a team that is ready to get going. So Dixon will presumably get back whenever his marriage is over. It's not like I'm worried about Dixon anyway, right? Like, I know he knows how to punt. I know he knows how to kick. I know he knows how to hold for field goals and extra points. So, you know, I don't think he needs more practice there, really. All right, so in case you were wondering if there was going to be any drama there, doesn't look like it. We do have some injury stuff, however. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on your perspective, Greg Bell passes along here that a lot of it is the same stuff that we're used to. According to McDonald, don't expect Tyrell Dodson to be on the field until training camp. Undisclosed injury. So that's late July, early August. That's not that far away from the start of the preseason. So Tyrell Dodson, who figures to be the starter at linebacker for us, is probably not going to get a lot of offseason work here. Jerome Baker, by the way, still rehabbing wrist surgery. No indication that he's going to be back soon. So, first team linebackers right now are Radigan and O'Connell. And I'll tell you right now, that is as big of a black hole as you will find on any team in the NFL going into week one, if that's the situation when we actually take on the Denver Broncos. Like, you could go across the whole NFL, you might not find a position group that is leaner than a linebacker core starring John Radigan and Patrick O'Connell. You hope Tyrese Knight can get past at least one of those guys by then, but even then, it's really not much better because he's a rookie. So, yeah, not super excited about the Dodson-Baker injury stuff. To a certain extent, we probably were expecting this because Baker was coming off an injury last year. But this is the area of the team that could be really, really rough. I'm just going to say it. Curtis Crabtree has more injury updates here about the guys who were sitting out or not present in the case of Dixon. Abe Lucas still out, was expected. Anthony Bradford still sitting out. That's starting to really become a pain, by the way, because it feels like 3 billion years ago that we were told it was a minor injury. That should just take a couple of days. And now it's lingering on and on and on, and he's losing reps that he needs. Like, Bradford's a guy who actually needs these reps. Michael Dixon doesn't. Bradford needs it. So he's still out. Drake Thomas still out. Cameron Young out. Jarek Reed the second still out. I don't expect Jarek Reed to be able to play very much, if at all, this year because he had such a major injury last year. And Lance Boykin. Young, by the way, has a power body injury per Mike McDonald. I'm assuming he meant to say lower, but it's a pretty amusing typo nevertheless. So we'll call it a power body injury because that certainly sounds cooler than a lower body injury. But obviously we have a 3-deep rotation at nose tackle with Reed and Young and Hankins. So not exactly a huge deal if there's some stuff going on there, although he is a young player, so you'd like him to get the reps now. Oh, I'm sorry. Condota had a little bit of a thread here. A lot of the same information that we already went over is here. Fant did not take part in practice with some sort of injury. I guess that's new. Didn't appear serious. Abe Lucas did watch some of the practice, but did not participate, of course. The offensive line was as expected, with Raekwon O'Neal still working at right tackle and McClendon Curtis working at right guard. So the starting 5 of the offensive line still looks the same as it has. And other than that, he mostly just repeated some of the stuff that I already covered from the previous tweets. So yeah, Lucas, Bradford, Dodson, Baker, Reed out, Young out, Dixon absent, blah, blah, blah. By the way, nothing about AJ Barner, so it doesn't look like he re-aggravated anything, and he's going to be participating in the whole mini camp, so that's great. That's cool. He's a rookie. He needs these reps. And we also got another little off the field update from Brady Henderson. We tweaked the contract of Jarran Reed. And this is a little bit confusing, but to simplify it, I'll just lead with the important information here, which is this change to Jarran Reed's contract did not reduce his cap number for 2024. They took about $500,000 he could have made via incentives this year and made it part of the base value. The max value remains the same and it's all non-guaranteed. So Reed had about 1 year, 4.45 million left, plus 900,000 available in incentives. The incentives were taken down to 370K. The other 500K approximately is now part of the base value. So the base value has gone up a little bit, and there's been a decent amount added to per game bonuses tied to being on the 53. So basically, instead of having incentives tied to the value of his contract, Reed now just has to be on the team for X number of, not X number of games, I should say, but he just has to be on the team in order to acquire those incentives. So instead of a performance incentive, he just has to make the 53, which he certainly should be able to do. Reed still has his original $500,000 in per game bonuses tied to being on the active roster. His original incentive package was tied to sacks and playing time. So basically, we just made it a little bit easier for him to get his money. And this actually raised his cap hit, according to Brady Henderson, from 6.34 to 6.47. So his cap number has actually gone up a tiny bit for this season. So this was not the move that we needed to make in order to get under the cap. I imagine some other moves will be coming down the line. I don't know if there'll be a series of small ones or one significant one. But per Henderson, this seems to be Seattle giving a small contract sweetener to someone who played a ton of snaps for them last year. So it's kind of a reward. So all this to say, that was a long explanation for something that, as you know, fans of this team, doesn't really affect us, right? It's just a little bit more money that Jarran Reed can make a little bit easier when the season gets underway here, as long as he makes the team. One other thing that got brought up during the post-practice interview was about this Geno Smith leadership stuff. I saw this from a couple different people. This is from Greg Bell. About Geno Smith needing to take the next step to be a leader for the Seahawks. And while Geno Smith has been, I would say, our best player over the last 2 years, there has been some stuff said about how he's not quite a leader yet. And he talked about that a little bit. When things start to happen, he needs to be the voice of poise, and he's doing that. We are on record. I mean, he's the tip of the spear of the operation, when to step on the gas and when not to. So it really does feel to me, because I'm honestly not that worried about how Geno Smith plays in 2024. I imagine that he will be about it pretty much as good as the circumstances allow him to be, because that's what he's been for the last couple years. This might be kind of the crucial factor on whether or not Mike Macdonald wants to tie his wagon to Geno beyond 2024. He just wants to see what kind of leader is he going to become. Is he going to take that next step as somebody who leads the team in the right way? Because if that's something that he's not doing, that is certainly a strike against him, because quarterbacks are typically leaders. So this seems to me to be kind of the decision point. Past this season, are they going to continue to have Geno Smith around here? And they just felt like it was inconclusive based on the last 2 years, so they didn't want to make the commitment yet. But this seems to me to be the thing that the new leadership really cares about. Yeah, this is Brady Henderson. Again, Dixon was not in attendance for his marriage. And yeah, same stuff with the offensive line. Curtis and Fant on the right side. And O'Neal got some work when Fant got injured at the end. And we also got a little bit on Draymont Jones here from Mike Macdonald. Brady Henderson passed this along. He's talked about Draymont Jones moving around and playing multiple positions, and he admitted that they don't know what they're going to do yet, but he does think that there's a lot that he can offer here. And I think this is absolutely the right way to do it. I want to see Draymont Jones play multiple positions because his positions are crowded. Edge is crowded right now, and if we, especially if we keep Daryl Taylor, which I don't think we will, but if we do, edge is crowded, and the quote unquote three tech or defensive end or whatever you want to call it is crowded. It's all crowded. So like I I like the idea of him just taking off a little bit at edge and a little bit at three tech. Again, quote unquote three tech. I think that's the best way for him to have a positive impact on the team in 2024. I feel like that if he just plays on the interior, he's going to get stuck behind Murphy, and he's going to get stuck behind Big Cat, and he's just almost never going to get to play, and it's going to be hard to get into a flow, right? It's like it's kind of like a baseball player. You don't expect a baseball player who is used to playing every day to get like one start a week and expect him to do great in that role. No, he needs to get into a rhythm. He needs to play multiple games in a row. He needs to play consistently. And same with Edge. Like, if you're competing with a bunch of players who we like more than Draymond Jones at Edge, especially when he had to drop weight this offseason just to be able to play Edge, then you're talking about maybe only playing a handful of snaps a game as well. So if we can find a way to balance this, and I think it's possible because I pointed this out before, Draymond Jones did it in Denver. He played a decent chunk on the outside, played a decent chunk over, and he played a decent chunk inside. He did all three. And it seems to me that it should be doable. So the fact that McDonald talked about it as him playing multiple positions is great to me. He did admit that he doesn't know yet, though, which is totally fair. But we're going to find out the hard way. All right, that's basically all I saw from yesterday's training camp. Well, mini camp, rather. From the various beat reporters out there. We've obviously got another session today and another session tomorrow. So, you guys, go Hawks. Maybe another video later today if something happens, but more than likely I'll just be recapping the previous day of mini camp tomorrow morning. All right. See y'all later.